Imagine holding a glass of your favorite cold drink on a hot summer day, refreshing, crisp, and seemingly harmless. But what if I told you that just over a century ago, that very same drink could have been deadly? Today we take cold beverages for granted, yet before 1914 they were a hidden threat, silently carrying deadly bacteria and sparking epidemics. In this speech we're going to uncover the shocking truths behind why something so simple could be lethal, exploring the dangers hidden in ice, water, and syrups, and the science that has transformed our safety today. By the end, you won't just see a cold drink as a refreshment, you'll see it as a triumph of human innovation, hygiene, and knowledge. Stay with me, because every sip we take today has a story that is as fascinating as it is life-changing. Before 1914, refrigeration technology was extremely limited, and this had a direct impact on the safety of cold drinks. Mechanical refrigeration, as we know it today, was still in its infancy and largely confined to industrial or very wealthy households, which meant that for the vast majority of people, keeping beverages cold relied on natural ice, harvested from lakes, rivers, or ice houses during winter. This ice was rarely treated or sanitized, and often carried harmful microorganisms from its source, including bacteria and parasites. As a result, when it was added to drinks, it became a direct vehicle for disease. Additionally, without reliable refrigeration, perishable ingredients like milk, fruit juices, or syrups could spoil quickly, creating the perfect breeding ground for harmful bacteria. The combination of contaminated ice and easily spoiled ingredients meant that a simple cold beverage could be far from refreshing. It could be lethal. People at the time had no means to test for bacterial contamination, and the invisible nature of pathogens made it impossible to know which drinks were safe. Even commercially sold beverages were not immune, as bottling processes lacked modern sterilization methods, and drinks often sat for days in warm conditions before reaching consumers. This technological limitation created a public health hazard, turning what we now consider a simple pleasure into a significant risk. The absence of refrigeration was not just an inconvenience, it was a critical factor in why cold drinks carried deadly potential, shaping the ways in which societies approached drink consumption and storage. In the early 20th century before 1914, water contamination was one of the most dangerous threats to human health, and it directly affected the safety of cold drinks. In many cities and towns, clean drinking water was not guaranteed, and municipal water systems were often inadequate or non-existent. Rivers, lakes, and wells, the primary sources of water, were frequently polluted with human and animal waste, industrial runoff, and other harmful substances. When this water was used to make beverages, it introduced bacteria, viruses, and parasites into drinks that were thought to be refreshing. Diseases such as typhoid, cholera, and dysentery were common, and contaminated cold drinks became a major vector for these illnesses. Ice used to chill beverages was another critical factor because it was usually harvested from natural water sources that were already contaminated. Without proper sterilization or treatment, the ice carried these pathogens straight into cups and bottles. Bottled sodas, fruit punches, and lemonade were particularly risky because the water used in their preparation was rarely boiled or filtered, and pasteurization techniques were not widespread. People often trusted that cold drinks were safe because the chilling effect masked odors and tastes that might indicate spoilage, leading to a false sense of security. Public awareness of microbial contamination was limited, and preventive measures such as boiling water or disinfecting ice were not routine practices. Consequently, consuming a simple cold beverage could result in serious illness or even death. Water contamination was therefore not a minor inconvenience, but a silent killer that made cold drinks hazardous and contributed to widespread epidemics. During that era before 1914, poor food safety standards played a significant role in making cold drinks dangerous to consume. At that time, hygiene practices in the preparation and handling of beverages were minimal, and many people had little understanding of germs or how they spread. Utensils, bottles, and ice were often reused without proper cleaning, allowing bacteria to accumulate and multiply. Vendors who sold drinks in public spaces typically worked under unsanitary conditions, and there were few, if any, regulations enforcing cleanliness or safety. Drinks were frequently prepared in open environments where dust, flies, and other contaminants could easily enter, further increasing the risk of infection. Even well-intentioned ice delivery or soda bottling businesses could unintentionally spread pathogens because the equipment used, including scoops, containers, and bottling machines, was rarely sterilized. The lack of standardized hygiene practices meant that a beverage could be contaminated at multiple points, from preparation to serving, and consumers had no way of knowing whether what they were drinking was safe. This problem was compounded in urban areas, where high population density allowed diseases to spread quickly. Cold drinks, particularly those served in cafes, saloons, or street stalls, were therefore not just refreshments, but potential carriers of serious illnesses such as typhoid fever and cholera. The absence of rigorous food safety measures created an environment in which a simple habit, enjoying a cold drink, could become a dangerous gamble with public health, showing that hygiene and sanitation were as crucial as the ingredients themselves in preventing lethal outcomes. Before 1914, pasteurization was not widely applied to beverages, and this contributed significantly to the lethality of cold drinks. Pasteurization, the process of heating liquids to kill harmful bacteria and other pathogens, was still a developing technology, and many drink producers either did not have access to it or did not implement it due to cost and lack of awareness. As a result, beverages such as fruit juices, milk-based drinks, and even carbonated sodas could harbor dangerous microorganisms that multiplied quickly, especially when stored without refrigeration. Without pasteurization, bacteria like Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria could survive in drinks, making them a direct route for infection. Even seemingly innocuous ingredients, such as sugar syrups and flavorings, could become breeding grounds for bacteria if they were contaminated during preparation. Cold drinks were often served with ice harvested from rivers, ponds, or poorly maintained ice houses, which further increased the microbial load. Consumers had no reliable way to detect contamination because the drinks could taste, smell, and look perfectly normal while being loaded with pathogens. The lack of widespread pasteurization meant that both homemade and commercially produced beverages carried unpredictable risks, and outbreaks of illness were common in communities that consumed these drinks. This technological and procedural gap illustrates how critical pasteurization would later become in making beverages safe for consumption. Before its adoption, the absence of such microbial control mechanisms turned cold drinks into potential carriers of serious, sometimes fatal diseases, emphasizing that the safety of beverages relied not only on water quality and hygiene, but also on scientific intervention that had not yet reached the general population. Before 1914, there was a widespread misconception that cold drinks were inherently safe because they were chilled, and this belief contributed to their dangerous nature. People assumed that the cold temperature alone could prevent spoilage or kill harmful microorganisms, not realizing that bacteria and viruses could survive and even thrive in iced beverages. This false sense of security meant that individuals paid little attention to the cleanliness of the water, ice, or utensils used in preparing these drinks. Vendors and consumers alike often overlooked contamination risks, believing that the refreshing chill provided protection against disease. This misconception was particularly dangerous because ice was frequently harvested from natural sources such as rivers, lakes, and ponds, which were often polluted with sewage or industrial waste. When such ice was added to drinks, it introduced bacteria, parasites, and viruses directly into beverages without any visible signs of contamination. In addition, ingredients like fruit juices, syrups, and milk were used without sterilization or pasteurization, allowing pathogens to multiply even in cold conditions. People did not routinely boil water or disinfect containers, relying instead on the idea that cold drinks were clean by virtue of being cold. The perception that cold beverages were safe also discouraged public health authorities and beverage producers from enforcing stricter hygiene measures or educating the public about microbial dangers. This misbelief turned a simple habit, drinking a refreshing cold beverage, into a potential health hazard, illustrating that appearances and assumptions about safety could be dangerously misleading when it came to early 20th century food and drink practices. Before 1914, epidemic outbreaks were closely linked to the consumption of contaminated cold drinks, highlighting the serious public health risks associated with beverages of the time. Historical records reveal that typhoid, cholera, and dysentery often spread rapidly through communities after people consumed drinks made with polluted water or ice. In urban areas where population density was high, a single contaminated batch of lemonade, soda, or fruit punch could affect dozens or even hundreds of people, creating localized epidemics. Street vendors, cafes, and soda fountains were common sources because they often lacked basic sanitation practices, reused containers without proper cleaning, and served ice harvested from unsafe sources. Even bottled drinks could be dangerous, as bottling processes were not standardized, and bottles were often rinsed in contaminated water or stored in unsanitary conditions. Public awareness of microbial contamination was limited, and medical understanding of how diseases spread through food and drink was still developing, which made prevention extremely difficult. Outbreaks were sometimes traced back to a single source of ice or water, demonstrating how a seemingly minor ingredient could have devastating consequences when hygiene and safety measures were absent. The repeated occurrence of such outbreaks gradually led to increased interest in public health regulations, the introduction of safer water supplies, and eventually the pasteurization and sterilization of beverages. These epidemic events illustrate that cold drinks were not merely inconvenient or unpleasant when contaminated, they were potent vectors of disease that could threaten entire communities, showing the deadly combination of poor sanitation, lack of technology, and widespread misconceptions about beverage safety in the early 20th century. In conclusion, the story of cold drinks before 1914 is a striking reminder of how technology, hygiene, and knowledge shape our daily lives. What we now consider a simple pleasure, enjoying an ice-cold beverage, was once a potentially deadly choice due to contaminated water, unsafe ice, poor hygiene, lack of pasteurization, and widespread misconceptions about safety. These challenges not only highlight the importance of scientific innovation and public health measures, but also show how human understanding evolves to protect life. Today, thanks to refrigeration, sanitation, and strict safety standards, cold drinks are no longer a threat, but a source of refreshment and enjoyment, reflecting the progress society has made over the past century. Good luck to each one of you in applying the lessons of history to the choices we make today, whether in science, health, or daily life. Always remember that curiosity, caution, and innovation can turn danger into opportunity. Thank you for your time, attention, and enthusiasm. May your journey toward knowledge and understanding be as refreshing as the cold drinks we enjoy safely today.